Yo, welcome back everybody. Today we have a video that's a little bit different than our typical videos. Today is not a gameplay video, but rather a tier list video. And not just a tier list on which heroes are good in this meta, etc, etc. It's really a way of thinking about what are good Nagas, where they rate, if you would like to say, in a vacuum. Are these good units to be picking up at different times and different points of the games? And which ones are really game defining and class defining? Because right now, Nagas are the only tribe that matters. And learning how to view the tribe as a whole, and the combinations of, say, Siren with Athissa, with Gogozola, whatever, Gargonzola, the other 6-star, the one that nobody pronounces correctly, and all of the other options available. There are some very big sleepers out there, and they're very overrated Naga that exist too. On those final board states, especially once you get to that final state with like Athissa and Siren, there are a lot of people that are prioritizing cards like Lava Lurker and cards like the 4/5 Taunt, whatever its name is, the one that scales 1 per spell, just because they can be big numbers and potentially get Divine Shields, but they lose on a ton of scaling because you lose the synergy between Siren and you lose the synergy between that and Athissa. And if you don't have a bunch of Spellcraft minions on the board, then you start losing scaling turn after turn. And building one big minion, even a Divine Shield minion, just isn't worth it. Because of Leroy and because of poison that exists is the only real way to counteract what you're doing. You're the biggest person in the lobby by a landslide. Diversify your stats, build outward, build wide, and then tech a couple pieces around it like a Leroy of your own, and they're easy wins. Naga, when they hit and they go to 6, there's nothing that beats it. All right, well, it's a long discussion video. It is, we're gonna try this one. It's a little bit different. See if you like it or not. We'll be back to gameplay tomorrow. All right. Have a great night.
Wait a minute. Might as well go over and do this. This was our original tier list. We'll zoom in a little bit. Where is Twitch chat? Why is Athissa down here this far? Why is Dark Gaze Elder so high? Go play something else? No. Do tier list. If the game comes back, then cool. Closed. If it doesn't come back, whatever. But yeah. Do we agree Corrupted Myrmidon is still unplayable? Yeah. In the current scope of the game right now, these are just actually never pit play cards. Just checking the game to be real certain. Mini Myrmidon needs to be pulled all the way to the top. Athissa gets her queen spot right here. Outside of that, Leroy's super impactful. This is one of those hard positions. We talk about this from time to time. Turn off the music for this. But like when you try to do tier lists and you keep minions of different tiers, really what we're going to be evaluating here, and we're going to set the metric as like, how impactful are these minions in the course of a game? It's not like, oh, which of these things makes the biggest board at the end of a game, right? How impactful are these minions when you get them? And Mini Myrmidon, turn 1 is one of the best hits you can possibly get in the game. Athissa is obviously like the late game hit. Orgazoa, like these guys, they are the meta. This cannot, it's just like, this is the meta. This is it. This is as good as it gets. You want the triples and the 6s, you hit those things, you win the game. Mini Myrmidon, I think, is about the only other thing in this game that falls into that category. Elder, Young Murkai, this kind of stuff, like, they might as well not be on the list. That tribe doesn't exist. This tribe does not exist in the game right now. We have not seen a Murloc get top 4, except for the one poison scam we saw, and it was really a poison scam. And we have not seen a Quillbore board get a top 4. At competitive MMR, it just doesn't happen. Yes, occasional crazy ones, they do happen. But very rarely. Siren, S tier, S plus tier. Yeah, I mean, it needs to go up there because it's really the meta, right? Snail Cavalry gets an honorable mention because it is one of the best hits in the game, early in the game, and allows you to power level. But really, the cards that you're looking for right now are Athissa, Orgazoa, Siren, and late game Glow Scale. Everything here, those 4, we can move this so I can just do these 4 right here. That board state is what wins games. That's it. Just get that board state. Get Athissa, get Orgazoa, get Siren to proc Orgazoa a bunch of times, Get Glow Scale eventually to make 2 spots on the board that you get 2 targetable Divine Shields, and then Siren procs the Divine Shields back on those. They're basically a golden selfless hero, is what they are. And then after that point, you just pad around it with other spellcraft things. Everything else is really unimpactful. If your final board is including at least the Athissas, Siren, and Glow Scale, you are very, 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 very strong. Orgazoa, you want to greed as long as you can on that board. Brute, I think, goes down to bad. Wrangler, meh. Pashmar, we don't really give a shit about. Mantid and Leroy are awkward to place because these things are like the only other way to play the game right now. Really? I like Brute also. He said that at a very inopportune time, didn't you? And then it's like, these guys right here are situational at best. Like, we don't play Pashmar unless it's a good stat line on the board. You're just going to kind of be out of the picture. You don't exist in the game right now. Lava Lurker early, Shell Collector early. They are very impactful cards. You probably should get Critter Wrangler in that range. And then everything else here is just like, these could be anything. They could have pretty much any text on them. The spellcraft text does not matter. You want to build boards that include these 4 things and then pad around it with 2 or 3 of these things. These guys here. Brute and Lava Lurker are super bad cards on your board late. When you have these and you're playing into Storm Scale Siren boards, what you're really trying to do is proc as many spellcraft iterations as you possibly can. Athissa itself procs off of Storm Scale, and as long as you have spellcraft minions on the board, then you get permanent stats for Athissa. If you are keeping minions like Brute, then you have to argue that that body that is scaling at a good rate, don't get me wrong, a good rate, it gets to be a big minion. That is more impactful to you than spreading stats amongst a bunch of minions that have Divine Shields. And you end up in a position that you just flat out lose games. You just make yourself susceptible to losing to Leroy, and Mantids. And it's about the only way you get beaten in the long run. Once you get online with this kind of stuff, you just don't want to put all your stats on the same, all your eggs in the same basket. So most of the time you want to get out of this kind of card, and you want to get out of this kind of card, and you want to spread the love amongst 6 minions on the board. I really want Siren and S+. Yeah, it's kind of gross. I think that, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to argue that it's not S+, right? Like when the build relies upon 3 minions existing, these 3, we probably should have them in the same tier. It's kind of hard to argue it doesn't exist. It doesn't end up there. Myrmidon, it's such an awkward conversation. This card is so impactful to get in the middle of the game. It enables everything. If you have this card early, then every time you see a Snail Cavalry, it's an auto buy. Every time you see a Lava Lurker, it's an auto buy. You're leveling to 2-on-2 a lot of times with Myrmidon, and then you don't have to play the game to like sell double buy. You just go roll 2 boards, a total of 3 boards, the natural roll and 2 more, and buy a high quality minion. If you get a Myrmidon into a Snail, you are coasting. Like this board turn 3 is so scary. You just like level straight to 5. Think nerfing it to 1-2 would be enough for the Myrmidon? I don't think we need to nerf Myrmidon, to be honest. I think that these cards here, Snail Cavalry maybe should be like a 3 attack. I think you nerf Orgazoa and Athissa, this synergy. I honestly think you can probably leave Orgazoa the way it is, as long as like Storm Scale and Athissa synergy gets nerfed a little bit and we bring down the stat scaling on Athissa. That Orgazoa is probably the healthiest of the cards here to exist in its current form. And the Storm Scale Siren plus Orgazoa combo, if that is nerfed so that like this doesn't proc Athissa, that's a big deal. My game's back? Alright, we'll restart to see. Good poop emoji at the top of the screen. But yeah, after that point, Critter Wrangler buys you a lot of health in the middle of the game. You never keep this on a late game board. Hey, it is up. Shell Collector, Lava Lurker, they're good in the middle of the game. We really, really, really highly valued Lava Lurker early in the expansion, and I put 1 total on the board in the last 2 days. They're like, okay, they've been on the board, but they get sold by like turn 8, turn 9, right? They just don't really exist. Meta's level to 6 and pray for Athissa. It's line up triples and triple into 6. If you hit Athissa or Orgazoa, then you play into that line. Otherwise, you have to damage control. And lines that play toward like Lava Lurker are good if you get it early so that you can snowball a little bit and save some health. But it's not a late game minion on your board, even if you Divine Shield it permanently. The problem is it doesn't trigger a spellcraft. So if you have a Siren board with Athissa, which is like the optimal setup, honestly it's the only good setup, is Siren plus Athissa. Having minions that don't proc at the end of turn, especially once this gets like golden and golden, you're losing so many stats per turn by keeping that around. And when you get 1 or 2 glow scales in the final board, dude, what is going on? It's just not able to connect. I see. What are you doing back here? What are you? 8th. Mine server broke again? 8th. We'll let it figure it itself out. 'Tis what it is. And then it's hard to rate these kind of things. Like, all of these things are fine. Honestly, I'm just going to put them all in the same category. They're all the same. In the middle of the game, like, Shoal Commander's a better minion, and Eelbound Archer's a better minion than getting these guys. Honestly, I kind of slept on this card a little bit. The fact that it itself is effectively a 12-4 makes it acceptable in a lot of places. If you have 1 Divine Shield, it's pretty solid. But it's also really good because you oftentimes buy a mid-game Siren. And then you have a targetable 8 attack in itself as a 12-4. This thing double trades, right? And that's super, super, super strong. It's really just Siren carrying this card, but overall it's pretty good. Hero tier list. Yeah, we could do a hero tier list too. If we don't have anything else to play, because the game won't work. This discussion's so important to me. If it's sarcastic, I know some people don't like tier lists or discussions. If it's not sarcastic, and I didn't take it as sarcastic, these are the kind of like overarching conversations to be like, okay, am I approaching this tribe in the correct way? And of course, this is just my opinion, right? Like, this is just my view of how to play the game right now after 72 hours. We've kept a good win rate. This is how I'm going to be approaching Lobby Legends. But no real but. It's just an interesting conversation to have. Is only Naga Menagerie now, isn't it? I mean, it's just, there are 2 tribes, or 2 strats that actually work in the game. There is Naga, which is your scaling line. Anything else that is a scaling line pales in comparison to the stats that you can put on a Naga board, and it aren't worth the risk of taking damage in the short term to build up stats for later game. And then there is like the immediate tempo line. That is like, I didn't hit Naga, I need to play to beat people down so that they can die before me. And these kind of cards are incredibly strong in those kind of builds. Like double Leroy, double Mantid Queen with like 1 tribe and a selfless hero or whatever is a way to kill nearly an entire board. If not like bringing down fights to only taking 8 damage or whatever, so you can slowly whittle away and die, wither away and die, while other people get chunked for 30. Naga also gets shields on top of their scaling. Yeah, this card is actually busted. Glow scale plus golden Siren, or just Siren, it doesn't even have to be golden, gives the shield to the glow scale, which is scaling off of Athissa, and then we get the targetable shield because this thing gives the spellcraft spell, and then you can just like, you know, shield the Athissa or the Sirens. Let's remove my Exna, guys. I mean, my Exna wouldn't help too much here, to be fair. Like, Leroy is better than my Exna in its current form, in the current game that we're dealing with. Now, don't get me wrong. Poison in general would be a way to deal with these kind of boards. Amalgadon boards would stomp on Naga boards with Presters being in. But that's not the game we play anymore. That is gone. Over and done with. No reason to cry about potential way to counter something with a card that isn't in the game anymore. So yeah, I put Myrmidon this far up because it's an enabling factor for the middle of the game. Snail Cavalry I could almost put into the same category. I just do like keeping them, you know. Not everything in S+ tier. Everything's broken, it's all busted. But I severely slept on this card. Plus it's the cutest card in the set. And like look at that little tongue. Adorable. Gary's a good guy. Leroy Mantid. Honestly, I almost want to move Lurker down even more. Like, I don't value this at all anymore. It's so good if you get it turn 3 or turn 4, and then it is just terrible and leaves your board on turn 8. Shell Collector obviously is economy. Critter Wrangler buys you time. This card is really useful if you don't hit the Athissa for the short term, because you're usually pivoting this direction or starting this direction, where you're like, I have a Siren, I have an Eelbound Archer and a Shoal Commander or something like that on the board. If you get a Critter Wrangler, then this thing at the end of each turn, or each turn, is like an 8-8 to 10-10 scaling. Interesting 2 days in, the meta's predictable. It's just overtuned. Just very overtuned. Do we want to move anything up to brute level? I mean, like, these cards are interesting if we don't have Naga in their current form. With Naga in their current form, they aren't interesting. They just don't do enough. Murkai, I mean, I've literally never seen in the 70 games that we've played of this patch one Murloc board nor one Quillbore board breach top 4. Now, don't get me wrong, somebody out there on YouTube, you know, Dogdog or whoever, great players, got a good game off of one of them and put it up there and were like, damn, that's awesome. I use the Dog example because I know Dog had a really good Quillbore game. That's great. It is the anomaly for the patch. And we're not going to change our view on the patch because there was one game that ended up being pretty nice. Poison Murloc do quite well, to be honest. Yeah, not really. Maybe, depending on what server you're playing on, maybe Europe's a little bit different, but when's the last time we saw a single Poison Murloc that got top 4? Like, have we seen one since day one? Like, 70 games in, we've seen one get a top 4. We've seen a lot of them in 6, 7, 8. It's very, very hard to justify doing that when you can't build a board that deals with Wind Fury, Divine Shield, plus bigger stats than you. Yep, I don't agree, but, you know, other people are welcome to have different opinions. Don't know what the big difference is between the servers if that's the case, but I don't believe it's even remotely good. Yo, King Joker, thank you so much for the 5 months. It's because 86% of people force Naga? Absolutely. And once Naga are balanced, then these cards are going to get significantly better. They're just not doable now. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking with Reef Explorer and Myrmidon. These cards are not going to get better. Pashmar is, I guess, acceptable. This thing is just like Brute. You take it in scenarios where it's like, it's the best thing we could get. These things are just almost bait every single time they're offered to you. I mean, it's going back down. It's bait every time it's offered to you. I can't think of a scenario where I buy a young Murkai. Just got in the server and didn't get any credit for my first place, of course. Let's restart, see what happens. The game's down. I'm top 50-ish and I'm not seeing any Murlocs on EU. It's interesting. I mean, I get theoretically you think like, okay, Poison board should do well against these kind of boards because big stats. How do you deal with big stats? Poison's good. We can play Divine Shield around it. We can play Ghoul, whatever it might be. Try to pivot that way. There's no real ton of cleave or anything. It does theoretically sound good. But it requires you to get to a Sephin state, get multiple procs, get decent stats from it, then get to a couple extra cards. Like, don't get me wrong, it's okay. It's completely okay to do. It's definitely not tied to Murkai in any way. Theoretically, I think it sounds fine, but in practice, I haven't seen a single, and I mean, not even one, poison scam. That wasn't a manted poison scam, like Leroy manted, since day one. And there was one on day one. Literally one. And that's like whatever we have. 70-ish games, 60 games or whatever in 3 days. Interesting.
Manted Leroy better than Self, honestly. Seth? Manted Leroy better than Sephin. Yeah.
That's the only version of it I really see. Is like double Leroy, double manted, one extra tribe, golden selfless hero, something like that. And then you can cycle glow scales for extra shields and whatnot too if you really want to. Yeah, I don't buy the argument.